going to take my Graviflyer and change it into a solid state machine. In order to do that, I had to understand certain principles about what the Graviflyer was doing. And then I need to adapt those same things into the new device from the old one. Let's start off with what we're not going to have. We will no longer have rotating discs. No motors, that's done. But we still need high voltage positive and negative, so the DC flyback stays. I need the Tesla coil, so that stays in there because I need the outer field. But how am I going to create the rotation? Am I simply just going to wind a bunch of windings around the coil and hope for the best? Unfortunately, no, because that'd never work. Am I going to go ahead and make Tesla coil inside of a Tesla coil? Well, I could. But that's going to ultimately be too weak in the end. Though it will show you how a principle works, but you have to reapply that principle to a different type of winding in order to get it right. What I did was a couple tests on my Tesla coils to find out what those fields were and how to get to them. Now there's two ways to understand this. You could put the high voltage on a number 2 Tesla coil on the inside or outside, make 2 of them. They have to be counterwound to each other, non-attached to each other. So you can put the positive on the outside, negative on the inside, or negative on the outside, positive on the inside. It all depends on how you see the field working. Now, what are you looking for in that? Well, just like the Graviflyer, between the 2 discs, I need capacitance. So that's basically what the Graviflyer is. So let's just get that out in the open. You're creating an open air capacitor. Your ground is now the bottom of your Graviflyer. It's no longer the ground. Tesla coil works on capacitance to ground. Your grounding is now the bottom of your Graviflyer itself. So you need capacitance to ground. You're going to create that between your 2 plates. Well, why put in the center plate? A lot of people don't understand that. Why have a 3-plate capacitor instead of a 2? Well, it's because of the way the Tesla coil hooks in. It goes in and it acts as a neutral field that gets into your positive and negative and amplifies them in order to create a higher capacitance. If you take your high voltage positive side on the top of the plate and you coat it with some kind of a lacquer or something like that, then what you're going to get is it's not going to spark on you. You're going to be able to build up your capacitance. You see, as soon as you spark, your capacitance is gone. And when you're going to put force upon that field with a piezo buzzer and push it down and start pumping up that capacitor, you cannot have it spark over. So you have to understand that that's what it did. And that's the only thing that he did. He pushed the button several times before it lifted, because every time he pushed it in and went down and up, he was building up the energy in that capacitor. What is it like in physics? When you take 2 plates and put them together and have a center divider in between them, and you pull them apart rapidly, what does it do? It increases the amount of energy between the 2 plates. Now, because your energy hasn't stopped flowing, it continues to build more and more energy. It's going to continue to push it out, push it out, push it out, right? In order for it to be a true capacitor, it has to have an outer limit to it. Without that outer limit, it'll just blow out the capacitance altogether and you won't have anything to show for it. That's why the Tesla coil field was so much of an understanding in this. It is simply, we need to look at it as a containment unit. It contains the high voltage inside, which is just basically energy popping around everywhere inside this craft. You're going to have to contain that. Why? Because when you start pumping that capacitor and start building up the energy, if it doesn't contain it, it flies out everywhere. It is completely useless to you. So you have to account for that. There's a different shape that this thing takes, by the way, and it's important to know that. This is where it's going to just drive people nuts. Is the RPM of the motor as fast as the field's going to go? Well, the answer is no. That's a misunderstanding here. You got to remember, I'm telling you that the magnetic field is grounding. So there's one field there. I'm telling you that the static field is on the upper disk and it's slinging out energy everywhere. Okay? And it has to be held in by the Tesla coil field. What does that mean? That means that energy is going to be all around it, including the bottom portion where your grounding is in the negative. Energy all around it. But then the Tesla coil field is going to be completely around that entire thing, holding it in. It creates a charged state on the center plate. It's negative on the bottom and positive on the top. Now, if you understand lifters, this isn't a hard concept to figure out. We don't use ion wind. People don't understand lifters if they think it's all ion wind. It's charge states. You need the bottom to change to negative all the way up past the top plate, or that middle plate, sorry. It needs to go all the way there. That whole bottom section has to turn negative. You need that top disc to stay positive. As you push this thing down, it goes like this, right? It's building the capacitance, pushing it away. What is it doing to the center plate? It's pushing it down. It's pulling the positive plate up, just like this. Why does that have an effect? Because your charge state changes. It goes from negative here to positive here. Okay? You want to go negative here to negative here. See, because naturally it's charged with the positive there. It's all positive on top. You need that state to change to the negative on top. Now, the negative is attracted to the positive. It is now giving you that state that you normally do not find in static electricity. 1 out of 99 experiments you find it because you usually don't reach the charged state that changes in it. When you do, you understand lifters in a different way. You're changing that charge. Once you do that, you have an attraction. It is like a dog chasing its tail or a dragon eating itself. You are going to chase it and chase it and chase it, but you'll never catch it. Now, with that said, how do we convert that over to a solid state? Now that we know what we're doing, okay, in our Graviflyer. By the way, I just go back to this in case I didn't make it clear enough. The rotational field of the disc is not the rotational field of the field it puts out. Because when you put energy on a disc, it flies off the disc. It doesn't stay on it. It comes off of it, so it starts to create a field around it everywhere. You say, well, I always see it stays on the disc. It stays on the disc. It doesn't. It doesn't. Never did. It comes off of the disc. You have eddy currents going on in the disc. There's eddy currents all over this craft because it's all aluminum. It forces things off the disc that would stay if it was copper. We don't use copper because copper would suck it in. We use aluminum because it has eddy current. We force it out. That's why it never stays on the disc. So the RPM level of the disc is different than the RPM level of the actual field. And when you get fields rotating in certain directions, okay, counter to each other, it's where they go in like this, right? But remember this, your static field, remember I told you it goes on the top, but it also envelops the bottom around the negative. That means you have one direction. What happens when you have one spin direction? Well, when you get the Tesla coil turned on, it's sitting in a standard state. It's not moving yet, is it? What starts to happen is you start to get a reverse direction on that Tesla coil field. You're getting time dilation movement. It's going like this. As it goes in rotation, it goes like this. That's the way it works. But because they're building against each other, when you put them that close, what do you get? You get a little bit of friction, so it's adding energy to it, so the speed itself increases on that field. Now that you know that you're going to be building a layer in between them. It's going to be a plasma layer that works in between the two. There's your understanding. Your frequency that comes in this thing has to be resonant. Both motors have to be resonant to each other. The high voltage and Tesla coil have to be resonant to each other. Those are both the two you got to worry about. There's a beat frequency that builds up in between them. That's how this thing works. Now, let's get back to the solid state a little bit. We're going to do some testing. And the testing part goes like this. So I'm going to take this Tesla coil here, if I could draw it well enough. And I'm going to create a winding in one direction. I'm going to take another coil, put it in here, and I'm going to create the winding in the opposite direction. For this test, I'm just going to put negative on this side and positive on this side. Now normally that would be opposite, but since the way they're wound and they sit across from each other, this is easier to see it this way when you do the testing. What am I looking for? Right in between right here and right here, I need a capacitance right there. Between the two, I need a capacitance. I need this to be in the negative so it's magnetic, and I need this to pull out close to I can as a static field. My actual Tesla coil is going to be over here to the side. Okay? In this test, I'm going to use the weak side of the Tesla coil, which is here, instead of the strong side that's in there. Now, let's take a look at it. Statics, magnetics, what am I looking to see here? If I took the wire here and the wire here, I'm looking for an action between these two right here, right? So what do I mean by action between the two? One of them is going to act magnetic, one of them is going to act static, right? It's going to act like a high voltage on one side and it's going to act like a magnetic on the other side. I need to make sure that we get repulsion, attraction, capacitance, and then I need to break the capacitance, right? So, what do we have to do to each one? Well, the first one's easy. There's going to be repulsion right away. We're going to have some copper and we're going to put it against the magnetic side of the coil and it's going to do a little repulsion. We'll push this thing around and it'll try to push it away just slightly every time. We need attraction, so the two voltages have to be able to meet and it's going to have to spark over. And when it does, you see how much energy's in this thing, even though it looks like half the time it's not even on. Now, we need to have capacitance and we need to show that it sparks over in capacitance, which is different than just sparking it over. Sparking it over in this high voltage field will create some nice, beautiful purple plasma, but that's not what I'm looking for. You see, in order to know it has capacitance, I need it to sit there, build up, and then spark over. Build up and spark over. Another one we're going to check is we're just going to take the wire and we're going to push it down. The magnetic, we're going to push it down towards the high voltage positive, right? Several times like this. What am I doing there? I'm simply building the capacitor up. Remember the charge state. Put it close together, pull them apart. Close together, pull them apart. Every time. I'm looking to put that state into effect. What am I going to do now? I'll add my Tesla coil, and what it's going to do is, because it's a neutral field, it's going to amplify my positive and negative. Now, where my distance didn't do anything and you heard no sound from it, as soon as you turn on the Tesla coil, you're going to hear a high voltage hiss. You know that they just got energy added to them. What is it going to do? It's going to create that capacitance that gives me that little bit of spark. Again, not this tremendous purple good looking spark. It's going to create this little tiny spark. What is that doing? Usually, I only see that effect when I put in my voltage multiplier on my AC flyback. That's that spark that I see. The one that has the big field that builds out from it, that's usually a DC field. Could it be changing the type of energy that it is? It might, or it might not. It just could be capacitance. I'll say either one. You can decide on your own when you watch the film. But those states I'm going to need, and there's a reason for it. So we'll build that out. We'll show the testing on that. But I want to do this in a different way. I don't want to use Tesla coil inside of a Tesla coil, or like number 2 coil inside of a number 2 coil. The geometry's wrong. And it's going to build out an ultimately a weaker field than what I want. I want as much energy as I possibly can without that spark. I want as much capacitance as I can get. We'll create that geometry coil now. You see, as good as this is here, this is only one time. One. I don't want just one. I'm kind of greedy when it comes to this. I want more than one. But I want the understanding of what I'm going to do here. I am going to create, see if I did this right. No, I didn't. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let me start over. We're going to create a field that looks like this. I'm going to create this field in here with energy. I'm going to immediately build another one with energy. And I'm going to continue to do that layer after layer after layer after layer. The next layer after this, I'm going to change it. So I get the energy here. I'm going to automatically wind right over. Get my energy here. Now I'm going to continue that around. What is it going to do? I have a direction. I have a direction. Now I have two directions in my field, just like my Tesla coil. One's counterwound to the other one immediately. I'm stacking capacitance fields. The field I got for my two Tesla coils, I can get in each one of these layers. Now if I do this 1,500 times, I have 1,500 times the field. What does it come down to? For every layer that I built, I am going to get my capacitance in here. I get a secondary effect right here. Why? I have two counter-rotating fields, meaning they're in friction with each other. Now I'm going to create another field inside here that breaks each one of them. Now I have more energy. I have a static and I have the field that goes inside here, which I'd normally say is magnetic. Build one on top of the other on top of the other. You say, well, where does a Tesla coil fit in here? Because you have no Tesla coil. But I do. You see, I'm going to resonate the blue, okay, against the green. As soon as I put those two into oscillation right here, I have a Tesla coil. One oscillation, two oscillation, one oscillation, two oscillation, one oscillation, two oscillation. I am going back and forth in resonance. But because they're counterwound to each other, I get one in resonance, the other in resonance, one in resonance, the other one in resonance. Now we've changed our geometry. Hopefully you're still with me on this. What does it build out to be? I have a center core here that's individualized. Now I have both fields in there, right? This field Well, come over here, I got a leaky capacitor. I'm building capacitance in here in the center, but I have a leaky capacitor. What does that ultimately mean? That field builds out while my resonance field builds out here. I now have in here a vortex, a vortex. I now have my Graviflyer in a completely different look and a completely different understanding. I'm showing everybody the experiments because I want you to be able to see how I transition from one thing to the next. What I'm looking for in the original Graviflyer, what I change it to based on the understanding of the Tesla coil and then how things build out with windings, and then onto the geometry to understand why I'm doing it in this other way. Is there other ways to do it? Yes, but commonly most people build out windings the wrong way. They start just building coil just like this all day long, and they just end up with a magnetic field. I'm trying to teach you a little bit different way. We're going to change that based on our understanding of what we're looking for. This is not my design here when we get to a geometry coil, that's for sure. However, the understanding of what I see in it is, okay? I don't see the same thing most everybody does. Because of that, now I can look to manipulate it in the fashion I'd like to manipulate it in. And then as we do the test, we'll just simply prove it out. That's all there is to it. So hopefully in describing this stuff, you'll be able to see it. Now the testing that I'm going to put on now is basically no voice. I didn't do any voiceover on it. You can evaluate it for yourself and see what happens. I'll tell you to look for a couple things. Remember those states I was talking about? Do you get a repulsion? Do you get an attraction? Do you get a capacitance in there? Can you build the capacitance in there? Which spark over are you getting? Are you getting the big giant one, or are you getting the one that's timed because of the capacitance in it? You go ahead and take a look and see what's going on in there. The experiments are absolutely interesting. Just to give it a little understanding of what's going on, high voltage, the positive is on the outside, and there's no number 1 connected to this coil you see on here, just a number 2 coil. The inside is counterwound to that, and it's in negative. So it's just a DC flyback being connected at 12 volts between the two to give you a little bit of understanding of how much power is being put into it, and it's not much. On the Tesla coil, it's 16 volts is max on it. That's on a NPN circuit. Not too hard to figure out. We don't have a giant field there. It's just enough to give it the extra energy it needs to change what it's doing. And you'll hear the high voltage hiss. You'll also start to see the spark over be a much different spark. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the experiments and find everything that I did in them. And with that said, have yourself a great day. Thank you.
The old man built. The old man built. The old man built. The old man built. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality been stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to instead. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds.